All right, we are live. Safe, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for joining. I'll first give some background on what the heck are these interviews. I'm very pointed to say interviews versus podcasts because I'm not trying to be another podcast out there. But Safe and I actually met at an immersion by Arise. And one thing that I learned was the purpose of a vision is not so that you achieve it today. It's who it makes you become today, right? So um, I wanted to bring on badass sellers that really embody good traits of a good enterprise seller. That way we can take some little nuggets of wisdom and go from there. So pardon me that I have my notes over to the left when I introduce Safe because he's got so much credentials here that I didn't want to miss any. But former enterprise seller, Harvard alum, now growth and enablement advisor for sales organizations, starting kind of like your own gig here, and top sales prospecting voice by LinkedIn. I was like, man, I love that. Love that you're contributing to LinkedIn and becoming a whatever you call it, a sales influencer or a thought leader, whatever it might be. So I definitely wanted to have you on and just really appreciate you joining here, man.
Thanks, Zach. Yeah, happy to be on.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit, like, how'd you get into sales? You got an interesting path and why sales?
Yeah, so is I don't think anyone ever grows up and says I want to be a salesman. And for me, um, I'd been in school for so long, like doing my master's, and then after that, like I tried medical school for a while, and that wasn't something that I saw myself continuing to do. And after that, you know, there was something about just kind of every job out there that was really unappealing to me, which was the fact that you work really, really hard for a company, and you know, regardless of how much work you put in, you kind of make the same money, and you kind of there's a level of stagnancy that occurs unless you go into management at some point within an organization, and you just kind of get stuck there. With sales, what really attracted me was the fact that it felt very merit based, much the same way as maybe like being a professional athlete or just being really really good at a certain skill and getting seeing the benefits of that, like an artist or something like that. So it felt like, if I put in all of this effort, and if I work really hard, I develop my skills, I learn how to prospect really well, I learn how to do research, I learn the social skills and soft skills, that I'll get this huge payout. And so I saw people like Jamal and like Brandon Fluharty and some of these guys posting about their W-2s, and like Ian Koniak, right, talking about how much money they're making. I was like, oh, okay. So I don't have to go down like this traditional path of like just going through this one professional road, being a lawyer or a doctor or something like that.
Yeah. It's funny. I met Jamal this week at an event here in Austin.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. He's famous for closing the $50 million deal at Oracle. Is that right?
I think it was Salesforce. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. But you know what happens, Zach, is that you get there and then you realize that it's kind of like the way that a casino is set up, right? This like the odds are kind of stacked against you. The house has an advantage because the rules are always changing. Like your comp plan is going to be changing all the time. Your territory, like you don't really have a lot of control. That can be changed. That can split. It can change. There's just so many other aspects of like what you're selling, your vertical, your product, whether it's working or not. How well your other teams work, your implementation works. Like all these things can really dig into your ability to sell. And so then you start to realize that the part that you play, you can definitely make a difference, but you have to be aware of kind of all these other factors before you choose a sales role, and when you start to kind of plan out your sales career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know the theme for today is three things no one tells you about sales and how to get ahead. So I'd love to hear it from you on your perspective and how you've done so well in your career so far.
Yeah. So I started out in pharmaceutical sales. I did that for a little bit, and I transitioned to work at two startups And that was during the time of the pandemic where the job market was kind of hot. So it was kind of an easier time to make that transition. And when I got there, the first thing I realized was that there wasn't a lot of support in terms of learning how to sell. It was just kind of expected that you figure it out on your own. And I mean, you do have a manager, you have people that have been in the role before you, but they may have only been in that role for 1 or 2 years. And so they themselves may be new to sales. So that means that a lot of the nuances, like how do you handle inbound leads versus outbound leads? How do do proper account research, and how do you actually build out a business case? And like all these things are not really taught to you. Stuff that you have to learn on your own. And that's one of the things that I think was difficult about going into sales, but it was a big challenge. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is that when you go into a sales role, you're going to have a lot of these limiting beliefs, which you may have had your whole life. And this is probably true for any endeavor that you want to succeed in, particularly for sales, because there's a lot of onus on you to run sort of like your own business as a salesperson, run your own territory. And, a lot of times the oversight that you have is relatively minimal. But limiting beliefs are the biggest thing that can hurt your ability as a seller. So that's something that I really had to learn to overcome. One major one is just like overcoming this limiting belief that nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah,
Like,
I felt that.
yeah, right. Like if you've ever, like the first time, if you've ever landed a meeting on your cold calls, like the first time you land a meeting, it's like, oh, why in the world would that person really want to talk to me for like 30 minutes? Like
Yeah.
that thought can easily come into your head. But over time, you learn that like if you believe within yourself that you're providing value, like you believe in your product, you believe in your company, and you believe in yourself, those are the three things that you have to sell somebody on. And once you have that conviction within yourself, then it trickles through in every kind of interaction that you have. So that's really kind of the first point.
No, I love that. I remember my limiting beliefs were looking at a quota, and I was just like, how the hell am I ever going to get there? Right. My very first year. And then I had a mentor, which I think I'm like kind of getting ahead of myself here on where you're going, but a mentor kind of helped me break down a make map of how I was going to get to my number, but not just my number, but aim for like a 200% goal. And what was interesting is I was terrified that I was even going to make the number. And then I hit President's Club and like 400% of the number. And I was like, wow, it shows what happens when you have a plan in place, and just like being a new person, you don't have to be afraid to go after these big goals and big targets. And there's no reason why you can't be rookie of the year and like the person on the floor that everyone's looking to. I know it's all remote now, but I grew up in Oracle, so it was like 500 people on the floor, and like everybody either knows you or they don't know you, kind of thing. So I don't know. I definitely had a ton of those limiting beliefs, but that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, it can definitely be daunting. Like you said, looking at that quota, and it can seem like insurmountable. But then, I mean, you see people that you hear these stories of people that like land one big deal like within the first few months, and they're like coasting after that, right?
Yeah.
But you never know when that deal is around the corner. But it's like you said, putting in those kind of small steps every day and identifying those limiting beliefs before they can hurt you, and having a mentor that's already done it that can tell you that, hey, you can do this, is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another limiting belief I had, I was terrified of CFOs, just because like in our training, it was always the CFO was the bad guy or bad girl. And it was like, oh, they're always going to be killing your deals. So anytime I talked to a CFO for like the first 2 years of my career, I was terrified. It's like, does not have to be that way. Right. So no, it's funny. These limiting beliefs coming back to me here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why that CFO can't be your friend, right? It's like you can work together. And
Yeah.
I think there's because there is such a negative rap around salespeople from outside the industry, that people don't understand that a salesperson is really just trying to bring value to a company, is really trying to help you solve a problem. It's not trying to like one up you or try to put the wool over your eyes or, try to extract money from you in kind of an unscrupulous way.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go back to that point about the mentors. So you mentioned that you had a mentor and you probably had multiple mentors across your career and now being a founder yourself. But for me, that was instrumental because I kind of got flung into sales and sort of like a baptism by fire scenario.
Classic.
Yeah, it kind of like what happened to me with speech. I was on the speech team in high school. Before that, I was like the most shy, introverted kid that couldn't stand up in front of a class and deliver even like a small speech or anything like that. But one of the things that really helped me was going and I started just taking courses on LinkedIn from people that I saw that were posting a lot that seemed to deliver really good content, like people like Nate Nasrallah and like Kyle Ase and Salman Mohiuddin. And just taking their courses and content, I got to interact with them. And then I developed relationships with some of these people where I could ask them questions. And then Salman actually opened a community. Nate also recently opened a community, but they would host like weekly calls and you could get on, you could ask them questions. And then I realized that there's a lot of importance in iterating, like continuing to get feedback. Like you need the feedback component, but you need to keep trying and seeing what's working, what's not working. And that's, I think, one of the biggest hangups is there are a lot of people that read sales content, but then when it comes to implementing and actually improving on the process, I think that's where a lot of people are falling short.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely had my fair share of mentors, and I think I did a post on this recently. But instead of going and asking one really good person to be a mentor and like try to overwhelm them and meet with them weekly, what I would do is I picked many mentors and would just try to meet with them quarterly because it was not really too much of an ask on their side, right? So like if someone came up to you and was like, say, if I'm really hungry, I want to learn from you, let's meet quarterly. That's not a very big ask, right? You like 99 out of 100 times, I'm sure people will say yes, but it's coming to that quarterly event and making it very structured, right? And running it like a salesperson. So it's things that I did in the past. It was like, hey, here are the things, like just tell the news real quick. Here's what I've been doing. Here's my results. Here's what I'm wanting to work on. Come with an agenda, and like, because your mentor is not going to want to like they're running their own book of business, right? But like treat it like a customer event, and follow up with them and follow up with things that you're implementing that they told you. And like, I'd leave that meeting with, hey, what's one thing that I can work on that's really going to move the needle for me here? And they would do that. And I would actually go off and try that and give feedback on if it worked or if it didn't work. Regardless, these mentors are going to be in a place where like, wow, this guy Zach, he's coachable. And they're always looking for someone to be like in the on deck person, if we're going to use a baseball reference. People are always recruiting. So I remember as an early seller, I did that with about 4 or 5 folks, and all of them wanted me on their team when I was up for my tenure, and I chose my favorite one. So I thought that was like a really cool way to go from SDR to rep. Just go find the best reps, the best VPs, the best hiring managers, and go ask to pick their brain. They're friendly people.
That is such an underrated tip. And you see all these people asking about, how do I get promoted to AE? And that's all they're thinking about is how do I become an AE? But I love the approach where you took people within the organization, you proactively reached out to them, had a small ask, but you built a relationship with them. And you also took off some of the burden. Like you showed up to these meetings prepared with things that you wanted to know about and questions and, your performance. And you ask them very specific questions. So
Yeah.
that's huge. Like anybody who's an SDR listening to this needs to definitely take note of that. So I'm
Yeah.
going to keep that in my notebook as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, and then so we've knocked out overcoming limiting beliefs,
Yep.
finding coaches and mentors. What's the third thing no one tells you about to get ahead in sales?
Yeah. So number 3, as a salesperson, this is no surprise to anybody, but there's a lot of turnover in sales. And for a salesperson, I think the average tenure is about 2 years. So you need to be thinking about what's coming next for you. And it's not always going to be because you're seeking out a new opportunity. You could get laid off. The economy can change. Your product, which could be a great product, may become really hard to sell in a certain selling environment. There's so many things that can happen. But you need to think on these longer time horizons and start to learn how to network, because at the end of the day, even SaaS, I would say it's kind of a small world. Like if you go to SaaStr, you're going to see a lot of the same faces, you're going to meet a lot of the same people, and everybody knows somebody. But when it comes time to actually find a job, like if you lose your job or you're looking for a new job, your personal relationships with people that you know within the community is like a trump card for anything else that you could possibly imagine. If somebody's willing to put their name on the line for you, vouch for you, that can easily, and you're talking about jobs that have hundreds of applicants, right? Thousands of applicants sometimes for some of these high level enterprise roles or high paying positions, or companies like OpenAI, right? Which they had an AE position open a few months back, extremely competitive. The way that you're going to cut through the noise is by building these personal relationships, going to things like retreats, going to things that are in person, because a lot of people are working remotely. Find opportunities to actually meet some of these people in person, even people that you meet on LinkedIn. Try to meet up with them in person and build a relationship. I think that's huge.
Yeah. We have a KPI to be in person at one networking event at the very bare minimum per week per salesperson at our company, because we're seeing that it's just so much more valuable to shake someone's hand. We went to Pavilion this is like a side story. We went to Pavilion's Go to Market 23 last week. It's like 500 sales leaders there. It was like the Super Bowl for SIFT because we sell to sales leaders, right? We ended up having 90 between me and my other rep that went. We had 90 conversations. We've got like 20 meetings scheduled. We're hoping to get 10 ops and close like 3 or 4 deals. Like that is a great week, right? And if we were just cold prospecting over LinkedIn or phone calls, like we never would set up that many meetings, right? Then when we get back this past Tuesday, I went to Bolden Acres at this sales happy hour. It was Jamal's event, right? So like all these people want to go and meet them there. I end up shaking hands with a random VP of sales. We go to connect on LinkedIn and he goes, "Oh, we're already connected." And then I see I had already cold prospected into him with no response, right? But then we get to talking and he's like, "Wow, this is really interesting. Like I'm about to change roles as a CRO, but I know this VP of sales, let me introduce you. I know this investor, let me introduce you. I know this VP of sales, So I got 3 referrals from that one handshake, and it was a guy that never would have responded back to me if I hadn't have met him in person. And I did try the old way, right? Like, oh, I'm prospecting into this person via LinkedIn. So I just thought that was such a cool example that like in person is not dead. And is very much worth your time, even if it is after hours, or that's where all the good relationships start is at a happy hour or wherever it might be. But definitely retweet that point on networking for sure.
Yeah. Building genuine connections with people. I think people go about networking sometimes the wrong way. So there's definitely a lot of content out there on how to network. And I think, there's a website called Lunch Club where you just maybe just have sort of like these coffee chats with people that are already in your network. And the thing is consistency with doing that, which I'm not that great at either, is, having like 1 or 2 meetings a week with some people, reconnecting with people. It could just be people that you worked with in the past. People forget about that as well. But you definitely want to keep those those flames running. So you never know who you're going to run into again.
Yeah, like, so you mentioned having a referral is a huge benefit, right? So like a lot of people are afraid to ask for the referral or whatever they might feel awkward. Have you ever had someone say no? Like, I'm just curious because I don't think anyone's ever told me, yeah, I don't feel comfortable referring you, right? So like, just curious.
Yeah, honestly, if you've done your job as a seller and if you've maintained a good relationship with that person and they don't have any major hangups about the service that they got, I've never had that experience. And I mean, I would be shy to ask somebody that I had a bad sales experience with if that were the case. But I don't think people will ever tell you no. I mean,
Yeah.
if they don't feel super comfortable with it, they, you know, will still sort of just give you the open door. Like they'll still be willing to, be referenced, even if they don't make the direct referral, but they don't mind you dropping their name in. And it's one of those situations where just do it too. Right? It's like if you've already had that relationship with the client, name drop it anyway until you get into trouble.
Is this more of an ask for forgiveness scenario? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say as a general rule of thumb, just do that. But yeah, no, I mean, direct referrals are the best. If someone's willing to actually introduce you to someone, man, it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it fast tracks your deal too. Like we just had a customer or a user of Sift move from one of our customers to a prospect of ours, and she introduced us to the VP, and he's already talking pricing with us. And it's like we had 1 hour call, and you're already like thinking about moving forward with us. That's incredible. Typically, the sales cycle could be more like 45 to 60 days, which is already very quick. But it's like this is how you fast track sales cycles, which is exciting. Cool, man. Well, like I'd love to understand how can people find you and like tell us about your current journey that you're on.
Yeah, so an interesting space right now where I do have aspirations to put a product on the market. So kind of developing some ideas around that, looking for a co-founder, and planning to apply for Y Combinator. But in the meantime, I am working on a couple of other projects. I am doing growth and enablement advising, sort of like, being a coach and mentor for salespeople that maybe you don't, have enough support. You don't have the enablement support from your current team. Maybe they just don't have the resources. I am working with a company right now for that. And everything from like helping to build your sales playbook to coaching your reps, working on scripts, working on handling objections and identifying personas, basically everything from the bottom up. And then from there, I'm also working on content creation. So planning to have a YouTube channel up, not yet, but that's something I'm working on right now.
Well, I'll be your first subscriber, man. Let me know when it comes out.
Awesome, man.
I know that journey all too well. It's tough to get subscribers, but it really accelerates. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll definitely share my insights as well because I'm getting some coaching on that. But yeah, I'm very easy to reach on LinkedIn. You can just send me a message on there for now. And until I have sort of like a full website built out, that'll be the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Yeah. And top sales prospecting voice, given that by LinkedIn, you must know what you're talking about. So I love that.
I've got 5 of those badges now.
Really? What else have you been recognized for? That's amazing.
Oh, man. Here, let me show you which ones. Actually.
That's incredible.
Sales prospecting, sales management, merchandising, cold calling, all of those.
I might have to pick your brain on cold calling because apparently the pendulum is swinging back to cold calling out of email, which is great. It's crazy. So I'd love to pick your brain on that for sure.
Oh yeah, it's very near and dear to my heart. The cold calling thing, man. It's like it's fun. There's a lot to go into there. But
what's one nugget that you can share about cold calling? Just curious.
One nugget. I mean, one, just like a very kind of obvious one is just don't be afraid to call cell numbers. I know people have hangups about that. I would go for that because that's like when I was working in SaaS for manufacturing, my last job. They used to think that cold calling was dead before I was
Yeah.
hired in a couple of SDRs, but we were able to get so many meetings. Like within 5 months, I was able to get 55 meetings, and 90% of those were qualified. But I was calling directly on cell phones. And then I would also tonality. So one of the things is you'll notice this, and also because a lot of tech people are from California, they tend to talk like this, and they have like this upspeak at the end of their sentences. But like that, it doesn't sound very authoritative. So, and I think Canadians also, because they're very friendly and like they talk like this sometimes, like that comes out as well. I would work on having more of a downward inflection, and people take you a lot more seriously and they're less likely to hang up. Because I think one of the things is that whenever you pick up the phone and call, there's like a hamster wheel that's spinning in someone's head. And when they hear something that sounds like a salesperson, which is like, hi, my name is so and so. I want to talk to you about this product, right? It's like their immediate impulse is to hang up, but it's because of the tonality. So that's something that I studied from like Jordan Belfort, who's like the Wolf of Wall Street. He was one of the first people that really talked about kind of the psychology of the tonality of the cold call. And one of the things that really makes a difference is that downward inflection. It's like your sentences go down, like sort of like you're giving an order or a command, sort of like how a police officer is like, "Oh, sir, can you please pull over your car?" That, you know,
That's interesting. Because
yeah,
you always hear it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? And half of like more than half of it is tonality. But I was always in like the California playful side. So maybe I need to try to be a little bit more authoritative. I actually got cold called yesterday and I took the cold call. I always take cold calls because I'm
mm,
trying I listen to what works, what doesn't work. But he did have a very authoritative voice, which is funny. Now that you mentioned that. I've been trying it as well. Like I'm trying to get back into it because I do not think cold calling is dead.
yeah,
I like to find what is something that someone can't agree with, like a sales leader. And maybe if they don't agree with it, then they're not the right contact. But like I'll ask 2 questions to start. Be like, hey, is because I'm selling to sales leaders. I'll just ask them, hey, 2 questions. Do you think cold calling is dead? And like, what is the sales leader going to say? No. And now like they have to accept the cold call. And then the second question is, have you ever been cold called by a co-founder? Right. And they're like, no, I haven't. And then I'll introduce myself. Right. So it's kind of like it's kind of a way to disarm them a little bit, but I think it's kind of interesting. I'm trying to flex muscles that I haven't flexed in a long time, but we'll see how it goes. I'll keep you updated if we source some deals out of a cold call.
oh, definitely, man. You should be sourcing a lot of deals out of cold calls. I don't see why why you wouldn't be.
Yeah. Well, Safe, thanks so much for coming on, man. This is the exact type of person that I think is really good for the audience, trying to progress in their career in sales and go from that junior AE role to more of an enterprise seller, or maybe they want to go to be a marketing leader or rev ops or sales development, but kind of just progress their career. And I think all of these are really helpful. So I really appreciate it. Connect with Safe on LinkedIn. You might have like 20 requests for you to be someone's mentor, because that's a lot of what we talked about. But yeah, man, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, Zach. Talk again soon. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Have a good weekend.
You too, man.